honestly thought that I wasn't ever going to make this video, and it's taken me a full year to really come to terms with the experiences that I've been through the past 4 years. It's one of those things where sometimes there are people out there in the world who are gonna want to take advantage of you and who are gonna see your successes and see the kind of good person that you are on the inside, and they get power out of bringing you down and tearing you apart. And unfortunately, I fell victim to one of those kinds of people and being in a relationship with that kind of person. This is difficult for me to talk about because I have a lot of pride and I have a lot of self-awareness of what some people think about me, and I know that I am a beacon of strength for some people, and when people notice me, they feel either intimidated by me or they think, wow, like that person is a really strong person and they carry themselves in a particular manner. And I know I'm jumbling about this a lot, actually. I never thought that I was gonna be a person who was gonna end up in a really volatile and hostile and abusive relationship. Um, but I did, and I was a part of a really shitty, crappy, horrendous relationship for almost 4 years. And mostly because every part of that abusive relationship I was in peaked, and every part of that abusive relationship was progressively the worst that it had ever been. And in the beginning of this year, I decided to leave that relationship, and it was extremely difficult. You would think that someone is tearing you apart and calling you names and putting their hands on you, and you'd want to immediately leave the situation. But the thing is, when you're with a person, an abuser, and you are the victim, they are really good at convincing you that you are the problem. They're really good at making up with you and being nice about it and promising you all these empty promises, and then being good for a couple weeks, and the behavior gets worse. And by the time you're in this abusive cycle and you're realizing, holy crap, this is really bad, like it's not going to get any better. By the time that you've gotten to that abusive cycle and you realize that the person you're with is abusive, and you realize that the person you're with has crossed the line and they know they're crossing the line, and they somehow convince you that you are the issue and that you are the reason those things are happening, you are so far deep into it than you even know. And it's crazy because this is something not a lot of people talk about. So when it's all transpiring, you're wondering if you're really that person who's in this kind of relationship. So at the beginning of this year, I got kicked out for the third or fourth time, like physically thrown out of the house in my pajamas. And I checked into a hotel, and I knew from that moment on that I was done and I had to leave the situation that I was in. And it wasn't an easy decision. There were many factors. Obviously I cared a lot for this person, and mentally was mentally and emotionally was kind of messed up by the cycle, not kind of, was messed up by the cycle that was going down of I love you, oh I hate you, you're the problem with all this, oh I love you, oh I won't do it again. Like you that we also had a dog together that we had gotten. A couple of the things we had together were financially intertwined. And in addition to that, I had been a like stepmother figure to two of the children that were involved on that were his kids. And to top it all off, we were engaged for 3 years. And it wasn't an easy decision, but it had been a decision I had been tiptoeing around for a while. There had been numerous times before where I was like, you know what, I'm going to leave. But I wasn't in the financial position to just take off because I was supporting him and I was supporting the kids and I was keeping everything afloat there to the point where I didn't have a substantial savings to go and put a down payment on an apartment and go through the financial steps I needed to take in order to be alone and away from what was going on in the house. So I left, I took the car, I stayed in a hotel that night. I was sick as a dog. I never get sick, but in that time, that week, I was really sick and not feeling well and in a really bad place. But I knew that I was done. And this was it, and this was the end of the journey with that particular individual. And I looked up different apartment complexes because I was going to look that following day. And I called my dad, which was so difficult for me because I felt like I was disappointing the people around me. As weird as that sounds, I felt like I was a disappointment and I was embarrassed. I was frankly really embarrassed of the situation that I was in. And I hadn't opened up to anyone about what was going on because I was embarrassed to talk about what was going on. Because I was embarrassed about everything and I not that I didn't want to hear it, but it was almost worse admitting what was going on out loud. And it made it even more real when I would talk about it. So I called my dad that night and let him know I was moving out of the house. And then I called my mom and I let her know I was moving out of the house. And the following day, luckily I had some gym clothes in the car because I wasn't allowed to physically collect clothes from the house because he was in a drunken, angry rage. I went to go check out some apartment buildings that I was really interested in, and the one that I was the most interested in, I called, they were open early, and it's like all the pieces landed together the way they needed to land together. They gave me the keys that day. I got a great deal on the deposit and all that situation. I didn't have to pay the first month's rent. They were okay with a pet so long as I got an emotional support letter, and they were really lenient about the time that it was going to take to get this emotional support letter. And that day, while all that was being processed, I went to the house and I bagged up all my clothes. I bagged up everything that was in a drawer, everything that was in the closet, and anything that was important. And I had no intention of coming back, except for the dog, because I was trying to figure out that whole situation. Later on, I find out that the person I'm with, being a drunken asshole that they were, wasn't even home. So my poor dog, who I love beyond words, that is my child, was at the house by himself. So I went and I picked up the dog And after that, I had, there was like nothing I need in my brain. That's all I needed. My dog, my clothes, that's it. We'll start over, because I didn't want anything that was even remotely touching that kind of that relationship. This was the start of my new life this year. And the first few months, first, I would say the first month or three, I spent a lot of time crying and really digesting what was happening and going through motions of a lot of different things, being alone and understanding the kind of abuse that I went through and realizing like none of it was my fault. This situation can happen to anyone. And really just trying to forgive myself and move on with my life. All this, while this is going on, I'm trying to finish my master's degree, and I'm still working full time and teaching and just trying to hold everything together. And, you know, for the most part, I did, because I didn't want the situation I was in, or I didn't want that person to ruin. I didn't want him, even though I hated him. And even though he did everything that he did to me, emotionally, verbally, physically, I didn't want any of that to affect my future and the things that I valued most, which was my education, my career, and just my performance in all those areas. Because if my performance was to falter in those areas, in my mind, that means he won. And that's not what I wanted at all to happen. So I tried really hard to just have a hand on all those things, and then really suffer when I got home and I was alone and when no one was around. And that's not good either, you know, like a lot of my friendships fell off, and a lot of my family relationships were kind of stagnant because I wasn't nurturing them the way I wanted to, because I wasn't feeling good on the inside and I wasn't happy. So flash forward to the middle of the year, and I'm experiencing harassment now. He's emailing me, calling me, texting me, blowing up my phone, figuring out where I live. And there was just like no sense of peace. Like I left him for all the shitty things he was doing, and now I'm starting my new life and he's trying to ruin what I'm building. So at that point is when I threatened him with a restraining order multiple times, and he did not listen those multiple times. And then I finally went ahead and filed one against him, and things stopped and they cooled down. There are still nights at the end of this year, there's still nights where I have to make sure the door is locked, and I draw the blinds, and I see headlights in the parking lot, and I'm like, oh God, please don't let them be him. Please don't let that be him. And there's still sometimes where I do get nightmares and I'm like back in the same place. But for the most part, my life has completely changed, and it has completely changed this year for the better. And I am not going to get emotional. I don't know why I'm getting emotional, but I hadn't been happy. I hadn't been happy in years. I had not been happy this year in years. And a lot, like I thought that the rest of my life was going to be this unhappiness, and was going to be crying myself to sleep, and like where I was like almost in a place where I deserved to be unhappy. And that's not the case. everyone deserves happiness. Everyone deserves happiness, and no one deserves to treat you like garbage. No one deserves to rip you down and tear you apart. No one you're with should be comparing themselves to you and your successes and undermining your successes to make themselves feel better. That should not ever be a thing. And it's one of those things where it's like, when I got engaged to this person, there were red flags before. And even when I knew I did not want to marry this person or be with them, but I had loved them so much and was so blinded by that I said yes. And things got worse. It's almost like that ring was like, I don't know, like his symbol that he could control me and do whatever he wanted because of whatever. I cried almost every. I cried so many nights over those 3.8 years. I want to say I cried at least 3 of those 4 years. And the rest of that time, 3 of those 4 years, and slept by myself most of those years, and had to deal with an alcoholic, abusive, misogynistic, patriarchal, sexist asshole who had all of his own issues and was reflecting them on me, because him hurting other people makes himself feel better. Maybe if he messes up the people around him, it'll make things feel less painful to him. And I did so much for that man, and it was so hard for me to see it in the relationship, because he would try to nudge away or stray away from the fact that I helped him so much financially, emotionally. I parented his children in a better manner than he could ever parent those kids. I physically built and contributed to the home that he still currently lives in and that they still currently live in. And his life will never be as good as the way it was when I was there. And that man doesn't deserve any of it. He didn't deserve those 4 years of me being a part of his life. He didn't deserve those 4 years of me helping him be a parent and helping him when he lost his job and standing by his side while he was lying and abusing and just drinking his sad, sorry life away. But I was there, and like, I chose to be there. And it's one of those things where it's hard for me to talk about this because I almost feel like it's my fault. And I know that sounds so stupid, but I almost feel like it's my fault because I stayed, because I saw the red flags and I stayed, and I knew he was a shitty person and I stayed. And I almost blame myself because I wove myself so deep into that situation that maybe I deserved it, because I should have seen the monster that he was. But after time has passed, I realized that I need to be kinder to myself, and I need to understand that some people out there just want to bring you down, and they just want to hurt you, and they want to prey on you, and they want to take something that is golden and spray paint it matte black just to make themselves feel better. I am very grateful that 2019 is ending. And I'm very grateful that I feel different now approaching 2020. And I just want to let go of all this. Whatever, like, I know this story is always going to be with me and I know I lived it, but it feels like a different person. It doesn't even feel like me right now because I've changed so much. And my eyes are open in a way they weren't open when I was with that person. 2019 was one of the hardest years of my life, but it's also been one of the happiest of my life because I'm finally out of that situation. And I just want you to know that if this is happening to you or you notice some things are going wrong in the relationship that you're in, talk to someone, talk to your friends. Sometimes I can understand why it's difficult to open up to your family about it right away, but talk to your friends and weigh out what's going on and talk to a counselor, I don't care, anyone around you, and just realize it's not your fault. You know, it's not your fault and you deserve better. And there are so many people out there, so many good people who aren't going to do this to you. Just as many good people as bad people, and no one deserves to be treated like garbage. No one deserves to be talked to in a disrespectful manner. No one deserves to experience physical or verbal abuse. No one deserves to have their partner talking to other people or doing shady shit or just being an alcoholic, abusive asshole. No one deserves that. Whether you're a boy, girl, anything in between, your partner should not be doing that to you. And you can get out of it. There is a brighter side to most things. And if you don't know how to get out of that situation on your own, then talk to someone and figure it out, because you deserve better than that, and you are more than that, and you are worth more than that. And even if it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end, you will get out of that situation if you want to be out of that situation. I know this ended up being a really heavy kind of video, but this is really something I want to leave in 2019. And in 2020, I want to be the healthiest, happiest version of myself. And I think it was necessary for me to make this barefaced, emotional kind of video because it did happen. And if I can share it and someone can hear it and feel like they can relate to me and maybe they can get out of what I've been through, then it's worth it. Thank you for being here and thank you for taking the time to listen to me. And I hope you have a very happy new year and happy holidays. So cheers.